This is our fourth, thank you, Sam. This is our fourth meeting of bringing people together. And so everybody's got some diverse, backgrounds and skills, but all of us, the central theme is care deeply about people and organizations and how they all intersect with one another. And some of us are HR practitioners, some are consultants, some are coaches. We've even got Anna Strauss, who I see you joined. Anna is CEO of a technology company that supports people and the work that they do. So it's just really a unique opportunity for us to meet other people that we might not normally get to meet in our everyday lives. It's an opportunity for us to collaborate, learn from one another, share, and I always say, lift each other up, because we know that whether you are a business owner or someone else, you work for someone else, work is hard sometimes. It can be lonely. And I know that just from my own experience, it's always really helpful to have a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of and just, be there to cheer each other on. So that's really kind of the premise of Collaborate. And just want to make a couple announcements before we kick off our featured guest today. So if this is your first time to Collaborate, just want to make sure you know that you are welcome to get on our mailing list, because we do send out emails periodically to the group just to remind you of things that are going on, or free resources that we want to make available to you. So Samantha Coletti, if you want to wave Sam, she's our engagement concierge, and she is also the one that you can contact for any information that you need, any resources, or, how do I get on their Slack channel, which is a great way to communicate with one another, how to get on our email list, how to get access to resources. We also just recently launched our partnership program, and that is through our EarlyEngage service, which is our subscription-based engagement model that we've created to support small businesses. It's fun to have Jen here, because Jen is actually a user of our EarlyEngage services, and she has been since we rolled it out in a beta program. So we're super excited to make that service available to other consultants, because we've seen our clients really benefit from it. And we know that some of you might also enjoy having that as a tool in your toolbox. So if you are interested in learning more about that, just reach out to Samantha or I, and we will get you information. We have some recorded meetings. We've got lots of resources and things we can share, and we're also more than happy to meet with you individually. Housekeeping items. It's a small group. So as we're talking and as Lisa's presenting today, feel free to take yourself off mute. That's why we made it a meeting and not a webinar. We want it to be interactive. We want you to feel like you can ask questions. We want it to be collaborative, but also feel free to use the little icons at the bottom if you want to put a reaction in or throw something in the chat. Samantha and I will be keeping an eye on the chat, and we can interject with questions that way as well. One other thing, and Anna, I don't know if you are in a situation where you can put yourself on camera. If you're not, that's okay. But I do want to make an exciting announcement. So one of the ways that we learned about how partnerships can be so beneficial is when we started working with a company called Spark. And it's funny, actually, Everett Rice is on, and he's also somebody that we partner with too, which is awesome. Thanks for being here, Ev. But what we want to share is Janelle and I, who's the other co-founder of EarlyHR and EarlyEngage, we found out about this program that was going on with a company called Spark. And this was several years ago when we were just starting EarlyHR, and we wanted more tools in our toolbox. We got hooked up with Anna and her team and learned about the employee engagement survey, and recognition software that they offer. And they were looking for HR consultants to help bring this into clients. And we jumped at the chance because we knew that that would be a really beneficial tool for us, and it would deepen our product offering and make just make things easier for our clients if they knew that we had a reliable resource that we could utilize that was also cost effective and had a really nice UI. So Janelle and I went through and got certified as administrators of the Spark survey. Well, Anna and I and her team, we've now been working together for several years. And we realized that we're bringing together the same exact sorts of people, and we both have communities. And so what we are going to announce today is that we are bringing our communities together because we know that we can just deepen the offerings and the exposure that we can offer and the collaboration. And one of the other sort of business things is we want to be able to expand what we're offering. And there is some software that we're going to partner with and invest in so that all of you will have better resources. So there's actually like a membership software that if you join our group, you'll have access to, and it'll be a little bit easier than some of the technology that we have access to right now. So Anna, I don't know if you're in a place that you can say hi, but I'd love for you to just introduce yourself real quick before we dive into our featured guest.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I am a road warrior today, which has been
No
very
worries.
uncommon coming out of the pandemic. So thrilled to meet you guys. I'm so excited for us to kind of join forces with our partnerships. One of the biggest things that we saw at Spark is we support a lot of HR consultants within our specific lane, employee recognition and employee engagement. Yet one of the biggest gaps that we found as we're working with HR consultants is, there's other resources that they're looking for. How can I market my business? How can I get more sales? So seeing what Michelle and Janelle have developed, I just feel like this is a great way to kind of provide a more comprehensive network and solution as we all build and grow together. I also see Rochelle on the call. So great to see you. She's a certified partner as well. So thrilled to be a part of this meeting and just continue to grow the network. And one last thing that Michelle had mentioned is that software. So this is all a part of the free community. So we wanted to make this available so you guys can network in between these monthly calls, share resources, and like I said, grow together. So such a pleasure to meet everyone.
Thank you, Anna. I think by our next meeting, we will have more specifics to talk about. We're just sort of in the initial stages of kind of strategizing, but we did want to share that with you and just encourage you to connect with Anna on LinkedIn and just learn a little bit more about Spark. They're a wonderful company, and they've really been a wonderful partner for us for the past several years. So we're super excited. So, well, this brings us to, one other quick thing is in the future, we did have a few people meet before noon, but if in the future, we're going to open up our meetings 15 minutes early for networking. So if by chance you can join us at 11:45, please do, because we want to give you a chance to network and learn a little bit more about some of the other folks on the call. So we're going to be doing that more regularly going forward. And with that, I am going to introduce Lisa Hammett. Lisa is somebody I met maybe about a year or so ago. And just we had such a great conversation, and she started talking to me about the work she did, and I actually enrolled in her program, and I can give a living testimony to some of the stuff that she's going to share today. Not only was it absolutely fascinating and did I learn a ton about myself, but I found it to be really useful. And you're going to laugh, Lisa, you're going to be talking about PQ reps and positive intelligence. Do you know when I use it the most? Is I do Pilates, and we always have to do planks, and I hate them and I'm terrible at them. And so when I'm doing my planks, I am doing PQ reps in my head because I'm like, how long can I sustain this? So just so you know, I'm actively using it both in business and in personal life as well. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisa, and just have you tell us a little bit about yourself and,
Sure.
and a little bit about, the work you do around positive intelligence.
Sure. So, just quickly, my backstory is I reached burnout after a 26-year career in the corporate retail sector. And I share this because this launched me into the path of which now I'm a certified positive intelligence PQ coach. So, I had a really ugly burnout story, and it compromised my mental and emotional health and my marriage, and eventually ended in bankruptcy because I was so desperate to get out of my existing situation that I didn't come up with a strategy of how to replace my high corporate salary. So I share all of that with you to say that had I known what I do now with the positive intelligence tools I'm going to share with you today, I could have prevented burnout and a lot of hardship and a very painful recovery. So, when I left the corporate sector, I started my wellness journey. I lost 65 pounds, became a wellness coach, and did that for 11 years. And then during the pandemic, I added on the life coaching. And last year, I completed my certification in positive intelligence. And what really drove me to that is I took the course that Michelle was talking about. It was offered free for coaches. And I had such amazing response myself to stress management. My productivity increased. What I noticed was my mental clarity just went off the charts. And not that I was getting forgetful, but mental clarity is so important, especially as we age and when we want to be really productive. So it was awesome. And then I started testing that with clients, and they had tremendous results, not only in productivity, but just in relationships and just a lot of different facets. So that's my background and where I am today.
That's awesome. Well, I know, so the work that you do and like at the course that I took is really around the studies and the book that Shazad Shamin wrote. And can you just maybe tell us a little bit about that background before we go into the specifics
Of
and the
course.
philosophy?
Yes. So Shazad Shamin, he's a PhD. He teaches Stanford graduate students, and he is also an executive coach. And he did extensive research on cognitive behavioral theory, positive psychology, neuroscience, all of the behavioral sciences. And at the root of it, he discovered positive intelligence, mental fitness. And really what that is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset, and how our brains manufacture all of these negative emotions. Largely, we don't know the half of them because they bubble up from our subconscious, and how they impact our behavior and influence our productivity, our health and well-being, our relationships, and so forth. And his research showed how you could intercept those negative thought patterns and then shift to that positive mindset, or what we like to call the sage. So it's a little bit about Shirzad, but a lot of scientific research. And if you're a reader, check out his book entitled Positive Intelligence. It was on the New York Times bestseller list for most of the pandemic, in the #1 spot.
So I know you said that you had some burnout. Is there anything else around your journey, I guess, that's been really impactful that, you think is important for us to know, Lisa?
Well, I went through, when I reached burnout, I will share this with you because I know you are in very high pressure job and you're juggling a lot of hats. And, I ignored the warning signs. And those, in my case, were tension headaches, indigestion, just I was depressed. I wasn't sleeping. And remind me if I forget, because I want to share something. If you struggle with sleep, I have a tool that can help you with that. But anyways, all of these things, I just, I was busy and I was working 80 hours a week and I wasn't sleeping and I was eating like crap. And I just basically thought I was invincible, and it backfired. So if you are experiencing any of those warning signs, seek help in some capacity. I'm not saying you have to have a therapist, but you need to get some help, because it will just grow and become a not good a situation. Let's put it that way. So, yes.
Absolutely. Well, tell us, so we're excited to hear about positive intelligence and how it can be applied to whether it's work in HR or as an entrepreneur or, some of us on the call work maybe indirectly, but we're all kind of indirectly to HR, but we're all working with people and challenges. So would love to hear more about that, Lisa.
Okay, why don't I start by just kind of taking a deep dive into how our brains work? Because once you kind of understand how our brains work, you're going to understand how positive intelligence comes into play here. So we have two sides of our brain. We have our left brain and our right brain. And our left brain is our analytical brain, and it was designed for problem solving, one task at a time. But where we get into trouble is when we multitask. Are there any multitaskers here? You can raise your hand. Yes. And the problem is with multitasking is it's not something really our brains were designed to do. It was something that was created by IBM, the computer giant, to run back office applications in the background while we were using computers. So it generates a lot of stress. And that's just one of the negative emotions that are manufactured in our left brain. So, any emotion that you have that's negative, be it fear, anger, anxiety, depression, overwhelm, all of those negative emotions bubble up from your left brain. And we have over 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of those are negative, which is pretty high statistics. So sometimes it's a wonder that, we can get ourselves out of these negative thought patterns. But the cool thing about the positive intelligence is there are techniques, which I'm going to share in a little bit, on how you can do that. But just suffice it to say that we manufacture all that negative garbage in our left brain. And in the positive intelligence world, we call those saboteur traits. And they could be, a controller, which is controlling, like a micromanager. Have you ever worked for a micromanager? How do you feel when you work for a micromanager?
Diminished.
Oh, yeah, that's a good word.
Annoyed and stressed.
Yes, definitely. Any other thoughts? Disrespected? Oh, hugely, right? Because you don't feel like you can do your job, which is terrible. Any other?
Well, and I'll just say I found the saboteur aspect of this philosophy fascinating because it's all unique to every person. We all have our own unique saboteurs, and it's that self-awareness that I guess I didn't have before, that when I did it, I was like, oh, this all makes sense. And
Yes.
I found that just fascinating.
Yeah, in a minute, I'll put a link to a saboteur assessment that you can actually take. But I want to just quickly go through really what the saboteurs are. And we have the judge, which judges us and judges others. So, what are some judgmental thoughts that you have about yourself? What are things that you say to yourself that you might not share with other people?
I do want to thank or chime in and say I thought that was excellent that you said, what are the judgments that you wouldn't share with other people? Please share.
I know, right?
One of the most common judges, and full disclosure, I've gone through PQ training as well. I'd say one of the most common judges is I'm not good enough.
Yes.
That's the one I was going to say. I'm not good enough, especially as a, being newer to consulting and having left corporate. I think that's a big one.
Yeah. And these are all manufactured lies that we tell ourselves, but we believe them, which is really unfortunate. Now, the judge also judges others, and I'll give you kind of a funny random example, but, have you ever been at a grocery store or a Walmart and somebody walks by and you're like, what on earth are they wearing? Do they even look in the mirror? And I know that's kind of a goofy example, but I'm sure we've all done it. You're like, oh my gosh, did you look in the mirror? So, we judge, and we don't like to say we judge, but we do. So the judge kind of oversees all of those other saboteurs. And, I shared the controller, but there's also, let's see, the hyperachiever, which happens to be one of my saboteur traits. And the hyperachiever, its good quality is that the hyperachiever is very motivated and task oriented, and they're really focused on goal achievement, which are great qualities. But the problem is they take that to the extreme, and you never celebrate your successes because you're so focused on pushing towards something else. So the hyperachiever might be successful, but not happy. And then we have the restless. We talked about multitasking, having your hands in a million different things, but the restless can also show up as somebody who is maybe a great idea generator, kind of thinks outside the box, is not afraid to try new things. But when it comes to execution, and you may know some of these people in the workplace, they could have great ideas, but when it comes time to execution, they just run the other direction because they just get bored, or they say they get bored and they just don't want to execute. And then there's the stickler. Any perfectionists out there? Anybody? I see some heads nodding. Guilty of being restless. Yes. Yeah, so the stickler, it's great to have attention to detail, especially in what you all do, because you have highly confidential information that you work with, and, compliance issues, and just a whole myriad of other things. And it's important for accuracy, but, when it gets too rigid and you hold yourself to these perfectionistic standards, then, you set yourself up for failure. And it doesn't end well. And then we have the people pleaser. Any people pleasers out there? Yeah. We don't like to say that, but here's a great quality of a people pleaser. You're highly empathetic. And that's a beautiful thing, because empathy is so needed when we're interacting with others. And if we want to have any kind of quality relationship, we have to be empathetic. So empathy is huge, and that's great. But the pleaser's problem is that they always put others' needs before their own. And when you're constantly doing that, how does that make you feel?
Tired.
Tired, exhausted. Maybe some resentment in there a little bit, because you're like, well, I guess I don't matter anymore, which is so not true. And the pleaser sometimes depleted. Oh, that's such a great word. And the pleaser can also be one of those individuals that, if you're in a group setting and it gets a little contentious because you want to make everybody happy, you're like, okay, let's just change the subject. Let's move on to something else. And, sometimes you can't do that in challenging conversations. So that's the pleaser. And then the hypervigilant is somebody who is very self-aware. So anybody been on an African safari? Okay, well, obviously you need a guide because you're in the wild and it could be dangerous. And that's why, first responders have such great self-awareness. So it's okay to be aware of potential dangers, but when taken to the extreme, how do you feel when you're around somebody who is always paranoid that something bad is going to happen?
Stressed.
Yes, definitely stressed. Yes, yes, first responders are under way stress. Absolutely. It does. And we call that a saboteur contagion. It's because their saboteurs are actually impacting your saboteurs, and they're having a little boxing match. So that's what we call saboteur contagion. And then let's see, the avoider. This is a fun one. Avoiding toxicity is really important, especially to protect your energy, but you can't avoid hard conversations. You can't avoid difficult tasks and circumstances, because that's how we grow. but the avoider wants to avoid those. So that's the avoider. And then we have the victim, which pretty much sounds like it is, tries to get attention by, constantly talking about how bad their life is, everything stinks, blah, blah, blah. And that's annoying. And then we have the hyper rational, and this is kind of a fun one. So the hyper rational is very intelligent. They could be an engineer. Rochelle, I'll get to your question in just a second. The hyper rational could be like a CPA or an engineer or a medical doctor. Somebody, again, very intelligent, but empathy is not their strong suit. In fact, emotions for them are messy and they detract them from being productive. So they just don't want to deal with emotions. So that's the hyper vigilant. And Rochelle, what were you going to say? Or what would you like to say?
Just real quick, and skip over it if you don't, but I'm a visual learner. And so I'm having a hard time keeping up with all of these, but it looks like you're looking at something. Are you sharing something, or do you have something you can send us at the end so that we can kind of see it?
Sure. I'm happy
Okay.
to do that.
That would be super helpful.
Yes, I can do that. I'll send you like my slide deck. This is normally a 90-minute presentation. So I'm trying to go through it like really quickly here,
Yeah,
but I'm happy to do that. I can send a slide deck for you.
that'd be super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So who's resonating with any of these? Which would you say are your top saboteurs?
Hyper rational,
Okay.
somewhat controller.
Okay. Perfectionist, people pleaser. Yep.
I have the ability to judge strongly myself and other people. I do say, does she really know she wore that out in public?
That's so funny. I know. We all do that. And what I want to tell you, and I'm putting the saboteur link into the chat right now for you. There you go. Is that we have all of these saboteur traits. It's just some are more dominant than others. So I definitely recommend that you take the saboteur assessment because it will be really eye-opening. And if you're interested in learning more about the course or anything else, we can certainly chat later. But so that's the saboteurs. Would you like me to continue, Michelle, with the SAGE, or did you have a question?
No, I think definitely talking about the SAGE is the magic of it all. So let's chat about that.
Okay, awesome. So we have 5 SAGE powers, and the SAGE is our right brain. So I just spent all this time talking about your left brain, but our right brain is, you can think of it as like our happy brain. And have you ever had one of those days where everything just seemed to go perfectly? You were having just really engaging conversations with people, and you were highly productive, and you were energized, and you felt physically just amazing. And it was just a really amazing day. Anybody ever experience that? They might be few and far
Yes.
between. Yes,
definitely.
affirmatively. 100%. Yes, that is you swimming in your right SAGE brain. And that is really where you should be most of the time. But unfortunately, all of those saboteurs that I went through, those tend to hijack us and cause us to react in negative ways so that we can't operate, let's just put it that way, from that positive SAGE brain. Now, the SAGE mindset is that every circumstance and opportunity, every circumstance has a gift and opportunity in it. How do you feel about that? Because I know for some people, they're like, every single circumstance has a gift and opportunity. That seems a little weird. What do y'all think of that?
It's a matter of perceiving them. They all do. It's just a matter of, do we see them?
Good point. Good point. And oftentimes, and this is how our brains work, that when we are so focused on the negative, all we're going to see is negative. But when we start focusing on those positive things, then we're more likely to see more positive things. So here are the 5 sage powers that we can use to actually handle circumstances, challenges in, with an ease and flow perspective. So the first one is the explore power. And we like to call this the fascinated anthropologist. So it's getting really curious. So I want you to imagine that you're having a stressful day at work and things maybe aren't flowing as well as that you would like. And, the first tendency would be to probably start to either judge yourself or just get really stressed. But from this perspective, what you would be doing is getting curious. And you would ask yourself, okay, so what's coming up for me right now? How am I feeling right now? Are my judges and is my judge impacting me in some way and criticizing me, or are some other saboteurs? And what's coming up for the other people in this situation? If, you're working with clients, what are they experiencing? And is it that saboteur contagion? Like they're, operating from a certain negativity and that's influencing your behavior. And then what about the particular circumstances could maybe you change if it's possible? And not always can you change them, but it's just a way of looking at the situation from a different lens and not being so critical. Does that make sense? Okay. So then we have the empathize power. And the empathize power is really trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Now, do we all understand what empathy is for the most part? Give me an example or put in the chat. What is empathy?
I can give you an example of how PQ helped me in that zone.
Oh, yes, please do, right?
After having done my PQ for quite a while, I was driving and got cut off by someone. And my saboteurs jumped in and started saying bad names to them and everything else. And that normally would have held on for quite a while. And within about 2 seconds, it flipped over and I went, maybe he's got an emergency going on. Something's happening. He's on his way somewhere. I don't know what's going on with his life. I hope he has a good day and he gets where he needs to be. And it was like click, immediately over. Whereas I know before traffic, it's like, it blows up.
That's a perfect example. I'm sorry, Michelle, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and then you start road raging yourself and you put yourself in danger and then you bring it home and you slam your bag down and infect your family with like that guy cut me off, or it's like we've all been there, right? Where you just
100%.
You carry this stuff with you and then other people become like the recipient of that, those
Contagion.
behaviors.
And you're giving somebody rent-free space in your brain. You end up thinking about that person for the next hour or 2 hours.
Yes.
Instead of being relaxed and back where it's an amazing program. It really does work.
Yeah. So thank you. That's a perfect example of how to use empathy. And you can also use it in a situation like if somebody is verbally attacking you or I'm not even saying that they're yelling at you per se, but maybe their tone of voice is very condescending. And it's a way that you could try to put yourself in their shoes, kind of like the other example of, well, maybe they're having a bad day and this is the way they're coming across, or maybe somebody, said something derogatory to them. So that's the empathy power. And then we have the navigate, which is actually one of my favorite powers, which is the flash forward. And did anybody here ever wake up in the middle of the night and your brain is just going 90 to nothing and you can't shut it off and you're just ruminating off all this stuff? So that's clearly a sign of stress. Anybody? Yes. Seeing lots of, okay. So oftentimes when we just fixate on things like that, it's yippers. It's those things that are outside of our control, usually. And this is a really great way to diffuse that. So, and it could be at work too. So you could diffuse it by saying, okay, at the end of my life, looking back, if I'm looking at my older, wiser self, would my older, wiser self think that this was worth ruminating over? And 9 times out of 10, they're like, this is not worth your time. It's just not. Just let it go. Or if it's maybe a minor, thing that you need to focus on, and then again, just let it go. So it's your older, wiser self kind of directing.
Just
And
a
then-
little, like,
yeah.
just a slight change, not like a little pivot around that same thing. The one thing I know I do for myself is say, is this going to matter a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? And so, like, I'll give you an example, and this is, I'm embarrassed to tell you, but I can be a raging, what, when my family is running late and we're trying to go somewhere, because and sometimes I am the late person, but that's another story. But, we're gonna, and this is, it's so typical, like for church, I'm like, we're the late family. Like, why do we always have to be the late family? And why, and you start ranting and you're like, oh my gosh, does this even matter? Like, who cares if we're 5 minutes late? Who really is judging us? And does it even matter? No, nobody cares. So I've gotten much better because I play that back in my head and I think a week from now, I'm not going to remember that we were 5 or 10 minutes late. Like, that just doesn't matter in the scheme of things. That just reframing that has really helped me enormously. And it's helped me with my kids when they think there's like some major crisis, and we kind of play it forward and think about, are you even going to remember this a year from now? No. So, it's just a good way to sort of move on. So anyway, that's just my little tidbit. So
That's awesome. No, that's a great example. So the next one that I want to share with you is the innovate power. And this is a fun one. Have you ever been in a meeting and maybe you're facilitating that meeting, and everybody, it's very important that everybody contribute in some way, but there's those individuals that are always talking. And then there's those that sit at the back of the room, or just, it could be Zoom, and they just never say anything. And it's not that they don't have anything valuable to say. It's just because other people are always monopolizing the conversation. So if you're having a conversation with a client or a team or, something like that, and you really need some valuable input, this is a cool way that you could do it. And we call it the yes and. So basically what it would be is you would be facilitating a meeting, and give me an example of a topic of discussion that you might have that would require everybody's input.
Just changing a standard process.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. All right. So process improvements, let's just say. All right. So let's say, Kathy, you are facilitating this and just, saying we're here today to really discuss different ideas for improving our processes. So Janelle, would you start? And then Janelle would give an example. And then it would go to, let's say, Everett. And Everett would say, Janelle, what I like about that is, so he would pick one thing that she said that he found valuable. And then Everett would provide something that he felt could be beneficial in helping that process. And then it would just continue. So it could go to Ray. And then, Ray would say, Everett, what I like about what you just said is this, and it would go around until everybody in the group has had an opportunity to say something. Now, the key thing here is not to overanalyze and start critiquing some of these ideas while people are generating ideas, because the curiosity idea generation, that's from the sage. And when we start critiquing, it can actually go very quickly into a saboteur mindset. So we want everybody to be creatively thinking. And then at the end, when all the ideas have been presented, then the facilitator, Kathy, you could say, okay, of these 10 or 15 different ideas that we came up with, Are there some that maybe aren't applicable to what we're trying to do right now? And then you could just cross those out. And then you can just start reflecting on the others. And then it's time for open discussion. So it's a great way to facilitate input from everybody in the room. So just kind of a fun thing. And then the last thing, then I'll turn it back to you, Michelle, is the activate power. And the activate power is really anticipating a saboteur reaction. So let's say you're giving a presentation and you've been preparing for a long time, and you are maybe anticipating some of the saboteurs that might come up on presentation day. And maybe it's your judge saying, well, you know what, Alan, let's say it's Alan's judge saying, you know, who do you think you are? You're not qualified to talk about this, which is absolutely not true, but it's the kind of garbage that we say to ourselves. So it's just anticipating in preparation so that on the day when you're giving the presentation, you can almost just be kind of flippant about it and just say, okay, judge, I see you, just go on your little merry way. So that's kind of an overview, a big overview of saboteurs and SAGE.
Yeah, and I know in the program, it goes really heavily into the judge, and that is fascinating as well. So if you are at all interested in reading the book, I mean, I will tell you, I found it extremely fascinating. And I was like thinking of everybody in my life that really needed to take the course, that it would like make life easier if other people had more awareness about these things. It's really, really quite fascinating. But one of the things I alluded to before, when I did the course and I learned about PQ reps, it's a way when you're in the moment to deal with some of these stressors. And I use the example, which is kind of funny, but when I'm doing planks as part of my Pilates, which I hate and I'm not good at, I do PQ reps. And so that's just kind of a funny example of when I think about it. But Lisa, tell us about PQ reps and how each one of us can potentially use it when we're in those heightened moments of stress or, you know, distraction or what have you.
Absolutely. So there's basically what a PQ rep stands. It stands for, it's a positive quotient. And basically it's a micro meditation that you can do in the moment when you start to feel negative emotions coming on. So if it's stress or anxiety or anger or, you know, any negative emotion that you would have. So how you do them is you focus on one of your senses. So it could be your sense of sight, touch, it could be smell, something that you could hear. So we'll go through some of them together. So I want you to, in your environment of where you are right now, I want you to focus on something that you can see in your environment. So maybe it's something on your desk, it's on a wall, but I want you to stare at it so intently as if you've never seen it before. And you've probably seen it 50 million times, but I want you to notice tiny details, colors, shapes. If you're by a window, it could be a reflection in the surface, but you just stare at it intently. So that's one thing you can do. The next thing you could do is focus on something that you can hear. Now, obviously, I'm talking, so it could be the sound or inflection of my voice. So if you are, for example, talking with somebody and they're saying something and it's starting to irritate you, or you're starting to feel those negative emotions come up in some way, you can, again, focus on the sound of their voice. Or you could also focus on like the shape of their glasses or the color and shape of the iris of their eyes or the shape of their nose. So these are just ways that you can kind of diffuse that in the moment. Another thing that I love to do, it's rubbing two fingertips together, which could be like your thumb and forefinger. And what I love about this is you can have your hand in your pocket or on your lap. It's not like you have to walk around and go like this to people so that they're thinking, oh my gosh, they're an idiot. But it's, you know, it's very subtle. And I will tell you that alone, especially when you're noticing fingertip ridges and the, you know, what's the temperature of your fingertips? Are they smooth? Are they dry? This helped save me in a TEDx talk. Excuse me, that I had a microphone incident. Excuse me, and my microphone was not on. And I was able to get through that very calmly by just having my hand in my pocket. When the MC ran over and they stopped me mid-sentence during my TED talk and said, you need to stop, your microphone's not on. And I'm looking at the audience and they're going, oh my gosh, what is happening? This is a TED talk. You know, I was just looking at the audience, just kind of shrugged my shoulders. I just was breathing. You know, breathing is another way that you could do this, focus on your breath. And I was able to just, you know, start over and everything was fine. So, you know, if you're doubting that these work, they really, really work. Now, the one thing I want to share with you, we had talked about sleep, and how many of y'all, by show of hands, struggle with sleep sometimes? Pretty much everybody. Okay, so if you would humor me and close your eyes for this one, because I want you to pretend that you're lying in bed, okay? So have your eyes closed, and I want you to pretend that you're lying in bed and your mind is racing and you're trying to sleep. So I want you to imagine a big red stop sign. The kind of those stop signs that you see at a four-way stop, maybe in front of a school zone. They often have flashing lights. And I want you to say to yourself firmly, stop. Stop. What you're doing is you're self-commanding your mind to stop that chatter so that you can then focus on your breath. But this is how I want you to do it. When you inhale, I want you to think of the word so, S-O. And when you exhale, I want you to think of the word hum, H-U-M. So, hum. So, hum. That is the sound that your lungs make when you're in your deepest restorative sleep. Now, your brain might be going again, and you can open your eyes if you want. Your brain might be going again. So how to stop it? Imagine that big red stop sign. Say stop, stop, and then start resuming, focusing on your breath. Now, if you are really hijacked, it might take you a minute or two to go back to sleep. But when you get good at this, you will be back to sleep within a couple seconds. And I know that sounds hard to believe, but it works. It totally works. And you can do that throughout your day too. If you're starting to feel like your judge is coming in or you're getting really stressed, you could just imagine it's like this little annoying parrot on your shoulder that's just barking these things in your ear. And you could just say to yourself firmly, stop, just stop it. And that's the self-command that gets that mind chatter to stop.
I didn't know that one. I'm super excited to try that, Lisa.
Good.
I need that. I need that. Absolutely. So I know we're at 12:50 and I want to give everybody a chance to ask questions, pick your brain, Lisa. Who has some questions that they'd like to ask, or if you've had any aha moments, would love to hear those as well.
Yeah, I think hopefully a quick question, and we can take it offline too, is how does this compare? And I apologize, I was late.
No, you're fine.
This versus emotional intelligence versus positive intelligence. I think that's what this, yeah, I'm just curious.
There's similarities. You know, this positive intelligence can help you be more emotionally intelligent because it gets your brain to where it needs to be when it comes to emotional intelligence. So Shirzad, he talks about this a lot, that it's not meant to replace, it's meant to enhance so that you can be more emotionally intelligent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, completely. It's
Okay.
very interesting. Yeah, thank you.
That's a super great question. Thank you
No,
for
that's
asking that.
yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I really like that meeting framework that you were sharing around idea generation, and then it was simple. Was there a specific like name for that? And then the second piece was just like it's the very beginning. How do you? I think you said it, but just like how do you? Sometimes just breaking the ice and just getting people going with something like that can be the most challenging. So just how you kind of like get that sort of discussion started as well.
That's a great question. And so imagine if you're, the facilitator and whatever that you're there, if it's processes or what have you, you would just kind of make an introduction and say, I really would appreciate your input on this. And here, why don't you start? And then you turn it over to somebody. So if you're on a Zoom screen, then it's easy because you can just start calling names. If you're in a live setting, then you just turn to the person either immediately to the right of you or to the left of you and just try to kind of go through in like a circle and just, ask them, okay, Christine, what do you think about what I just said? Do you have any insight? What insight can you provide? And then Christine will give her example. And then let's say Stephanie is seated next to her. And then Stephanie would say, Christine, what I like about this, what you just shared is, and does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. And I guess
Okay.
maybe actually just for the nice sandwich, then just in wrapping these conversations up, you were saying, there's kind of like, hey, what's not relevant, and then discussion, but maybe just some tips in terms of like, trying to tie these conversations up nice, which can also be challenging as well.
Absolutely. So again, maybe setting the parameters at the beginning that when we're in this curiosity mode, this innovate mode, that we're just generating ideas right now. So we want everybody to share. And if the ideas are flowing really well, then when everybody's had an opportunity to share, maybe somebody else wants to add another suggestion. I mean, that's fine, but you are going to know when the ideas start to fall off and there's more silence. And then you can say, okay, so we've got these, great ideas right here. We've got 20, let's say, are there any of these that maybe aren't ideal for what we're trying to accomplish today that maybe we could table for another time? And that's a good way to basically eliminate certain things without pointing the finger and saying, Janelle, that was a stupid idea, which of course we would never, ever say. But, if Janelle had presented an idea that maybe wasn't the best idea, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the great point is that Janelle actually contributed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. So now we know when you say something like, why don't we table that for today? We know that you're really just saying it's not a good idea.
Right. And you use what you're comfortable with. That's a great.
I need the alternative version.
Okay. Anybody else?
Or any aha moments, anything that you are like, oh, that was super interesting or insightful.
Love the sleep trick. Gonna try it out.
Good.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And don't get frustrated if your mind wanders, because that's the one thing that I wanted to mention about PQ reps. You're not going to be perfect. Your stickler is going to go in there and say, well, I have to do each PQ rep perfectly. And I have to always focus on 100% of the time what I should be focusing on. Your mind's going to wander, and that's okay. But the thing is you're going to start recognizing when your mind's wandering, and then you're just going to redirect it to what you were focusing on.
Well, I encourage you to connect with Lisa. Lisa, I know you're super, insightful, and I've loved, continuing our conversation over the past year or so. So please feel free to reach out, and I'm sure, you're happy to expand on this if people want to have conversations. We also will send Lisa's information out so that you can all have a summary of what we've talked about today. I just want to say before we close to remind everybody that until we have that membership portal, right now everything is in our website. So it's just earlyhr.com. And then there's collaborate, there's a drop down. So all of our future meetings are in there. Our next meeting is going to be on May 9th. So it's always the second Thursday of the month at noon Central. And then our next featured guest is going to be Jess Sato. And if you don't know her, she's fabulous. She's actually one of our facilitators for EarlyEngage, and she's going to talk to us about the feast, how to free yourself from the feast or famine undertow of consulting. So she's going to talk more about business development. And even if you're not doing consulting, I think you'll find it really, really insightful. So hopefully you can join us next month. And then the month after that, we are going to be talking about process, how to put better processes in our organizations so to free us up to do more of our zone of genius and not be sucked into the minutia of the work that needs to get done, but it's sometimes can be overwhelming. So we hope that you can make that. If you ever want to chat individually, learn more about some of the programs that we offer or our partnership program, just feel free to send me a note either through email or through LinkedIn. And we just, again, really, really appreciate you being here and hope to see you more in the future as we continue to grow this community. And anything
Everyone.
else, Lisa, before we close?
Well, I put in the chat, I put my email address. Rochelle, I know you wanted some slides. So if you can just email me and then I will send you the slides. So you have all
We'll do a follow-up, Lisa. So if you want to send them to me and Samantha, she'll
Sure.
do a follow-up email to everybody that attended today, and we'll make sure that everybody gets that.
Awesome. Y'all are great. Thanks for all your questions. And it was a really fun group. Thank you. And I was trying to be timely, so I'm sorry if I came across as I was rushing through some of this.
No, there's just so much good information. It's just hard to limit it to just this time frame. So, all right, everybody, I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you next month, if not sooner. Take care and thanks and have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.